It's been 13 long years since the world said goodbye to the voice of some of the most unforgettable songs in music history. His death in 2012 left fans in mourning, but a string of questions was never answered. There were rumors of secret romances, hidden battles, and a side of Robin few have ever seen. For years, the family said nothing, allowing the music to talk. But today, the kids have decided to break their silence, confirming the gossip that refused to go away and revealing all about the man behind the myth. Early life and career. Robin Gibb was born on the 22nd of December, 1949, at the Jane Cruel Maternity Home in Douglas, Maine. He arrived just 35 minutes ahead of his fraternal twin, brother Morris, and the two went on to be among the most familiar voices in pop music history. Robin's English-born parents, Hugh and Barbara Gibb, were full of warmth, laughter, and a great love of music, and their home was always upbeat and jolly. The Gibbs were always on the move during Robin's early years, first between the Isle of Man and Manchester, where their baby brother Andy joined the family, and eventually overseas to Redcliffe, a Queensland town in Australia. Even as kids, Robin and his brothers were naughty and possessed restless energy. There are tales of them causing harmless trouble, small fires, pranks, and childlike stunts. But behind the naughtiness lay an unmistakable spark of creativity. It was during these early years that Robin Morris and their elder brother Barry started playing around with harmony. They would sit around singing the top hits of the Everly Brothers and Paul Anka and attempting to sing each note in harmony. Their inbuilt harmonies were apparent even at this stage. By 1955, the lads had formally started their first group, the Rattlesnakes, performing in Manchester area halls. Barry played his guitar as Robin and Maury sang together. The band, being young, possessed something unique, a raw, genuine spirit that attracted everyone to them. When two members of the band left, the brothers reshaped themselves as We Johnny Hayes and the Blue Cats. And shortly after, the family collectively decided to take a leap of faith and move to Australia and begin a new life. They sailed on a ship in 1958, the very same ship that had aboard a young Red Simons, also destined to become a famous musician. Without realizing, they were headed for their fate. Australia provided the Gibbs with the new beginning they sought. There they reformed once more, this time as the name that would transform their lives forevermore, the Bee Gees. The band's name allegedly derived from Brothers Gibb, although others claimed that it was named after the initials of an early supporting DJ in the local area. In 1960, the brothers made their first television appearance, singing a sweet, simple song titled Time is Passing By on the television show Strictly for Moderns. Robin, whose vibrato and soulful voice made him stand out, already sounded different from the others. By the mid-1960s, they were recording hits under Festival Records, and it was evident that something big was around the corner. When Robin sang lead on I Don't Think It's Funny in 1965, his voice had an emotional depth far greater than his age. That quivering, haunting tone would quickly become one of the sounds most identifiable to an entire generation, Personal Life. Robin Gibb's own life was as much filled with passion, drama, and heartbreak as the songs he sang. In 1968, during the peak of the Bee Gees' initial fame, he wed Molly Hullis, a secretary who worked for his manager, Robert Stigwood. Their romance started on a high note, and even a tragic note. The two were together in the Hither Green rail crash, which killed dozens and injured more before they got married, an experience which forged an unbreakable bond between them. For some time, everything appeared to go their way: success, love, and the future. They have two sons, Spencer, born in 1972, and Melissa, born in 1974. But fame and distance eventually began to take their toll. Robin's work kept him on the road, mostly based in the United States, and Molly remained in the UK. Their marriage started to deteriorate while maintaining separate lives. And by 1980, Molly divorced him. The split turned acrimonious when Robin defied a court ruling by talking publicly about their marriage, and was subsequently imprisoned for 14 days in 1983. It was a trying period that exposed how mercurial his personal life could be even for a man revered across the globe. Soon after, Robin fell in love again. In 1985, he married Robin Gibb, an Irish artist, author, and devout woman interested in Druidry and the Brahma Kumaris movement. They have one son, Robin John R.J., born in 1983, who would grow up to be a musician and composer, just like his father. Duniya and Robin were a creative couple and often helped each other out in their respective fields of endeavor. Together, they spent their time between their residences in Miami, Florida, Peel on the Isle of Man, and their great home, the Prebendal in Tam, Oxfordshire, an historic house abounding in music, art, and tales. But even their union was not without its problems. At about 50, Robin started having an affair with Claire Young, a 25-year-old housekeeper. For many years, the affair continued, and in 2008, he fathered a daughter with Claire. It was a scandal that reached the headlines, but those who knew Robin said that he never lost love for all of his children and tried to keep harmony within his house despite the drama. Aside from his personal relationships, Robin also had a robust political and philanthropic side. He was a friend of Tony Blair and a supporter of the Labour Party, even inviting Blair to stay at his home in Miami. Robin also helped various charities, being president of the Heritage Foundation and lobbying on the Bomber Command Memorial Appeal. Through all the ups and downs, love, broken heart, success, and scandal, Robin never changed one soulful dreamer whose music shouted far more than any rumor could ever say. FBI investigation and alleged death threats. Robin Gibb was at the center of one of the most unexpected scandals of his life early in the 1980s. In 1980 to 1981, the FBI allegedly began investigating the Bee Gees singer following a series of disturbing telegrams being dispatched to the attorneys of his former wife, Molly Hullis. The messages seemed to promise violence, with one of them going so far as to say that he had taken out a contract, a term everybody would understand to mean having a hitman hired and ominously warned, "It is now a question of time." The situation became quickly out of control as the messages were traceable to Robin himself. Gibb was then in the process of an acrimonious and emotionally draining divorce for Molly, the first wife and mother of his two older children. Their union had already been strained by years of isolation and differences of personality, but these threats pushed the battle into a much darker and more public arena. The FBI seriously considered the allegations since the purported threats went across national borders. As a resident who split time between Britain and America, Robin's messages fell under federal control once they were routed via American means. Agents allegedly investigated if the messages represented true intent to injure or were merely sent out in frustration during an emotional crisis. The telegrams contained sentiments that outraged both Robin's legal team and his own representatives. One of them reportedly stated, "I have taken out a contract," and another suggested vengeance for the manner in which he believed the divorce process was being conducted. Although threatening in tone, no criminal proceedings were ever brought, and the inquiry was dropped in quiet fashion after a few months. Friends close to the singer afterwards stated that Robin was in massive amounts of emotional distress then. His marriage had collapsed, he was in a custody battle, and he was just trying to keep his public image together while still working. They maintained he was not of a violent nature, but the outburst was of a man who found himself cornered and helpless. Nevertheless, the scandal tainted Robin's image for good. The case was front-page news in newspapers in Britain and America, and the story resurfaced some decades later when FBI records were released. Although Robin never spoke about the investigation publicly, it was one of the most painful pages of his private life, at a time when fame and misery and anger combined in a way that almost destroyed all he had achieved. Drug addiction and mental anguish. Robin Gibb lived in the late 1960s and 1970s, a life which would be envied by many riches, fame, and international acclaim as part of the Bee Gees. Little did anyone know, however, that he was fighting his demons within himself that only a handful really knew about. News reports that during his first marriage to Molly Hullis, Robin was having trouble with drug use, in particular for amphetamine and methadone stimulants. These drugs were common in the music scene of the time, and a large number of performing artists took them in order not to fall asleep during demanding tours and marathon sessions in record studios. They were very expensive. However, friends of Robin said that there were instances when his behavior became chaotic and unpredictable. It is remembered that he had spells of being hyperactive and sleepless, alternating with spells of exhaustion and emotional withdrawal. The stress of fame, constant touring, and the breakup of marriage only exacerbated it. Robin's mind was said to get muddled at times with paranoia. He began to get obsessed with thoughts that people around him, his wife, and her lawyers included, were engaged in a conspiracy against him. These distrustful feelings had created deep fault lines in his personal relationships. Some quarters report that Robin's emotional instability was partly responsible for the collapse in his marriage to Molly. Fights started being common and communication became strained. For someone as intense and sensitive as Robin, these conflicts were not merely about lost love. They became struggles in his own head. There were also stories of Robin pulling away from his bandmates and family at especially difficult times. As the Bee Gees basked in record-breaking success with hits such as Massachusetts and I Started a Joke, Robin's mental health was said to be weak. The fame that had once been his dream turned into an albatross. He repeatedly expressed the feeling of being misunderstood and alone, even amidst fans and riches. Substance abuse can have amplified these feelings. Stimulants can enhance paranoia feelings, and the creative nature of Robin exposed him to their effects even further. Those who worked with him in the recording studio witnessed how quickly his moods could change: laughter and happiness one moment and suspicion and fury the next. Despite such battles, Robin never lost his phenomenal talent. His haunting vocals and lyrical skill were always his best avenues. Most people feel that his emotional anguish and turbulent inner life were echoed in his strongest songs. Although he seldom said a word about his inner demons in the public arena, his later interviews suggested regrets and lessons from those times. The era left him with scars, earned and professional. But it also molded the man he turned out to be. Robin Gibb's ride of stardom, heartbreak, and mental despair showed how even the most shining stars have dark spots few get to witness. Falling out with Barry Gibb. The Bee Gees were famous for their amazing harmonies and songwriting prowess. But beneath the sheen of their sound, the Gibb brothers frequently fought over who should take the lead. Robin and Barry especially had a problematic relationship that oscillated between brother love and artistic competition. Their disagreements weren't just about sibling issues. They were about control, recognition, and vision. A tension developed after the huge hit of Massachusetts in 1967, one of the band's first overseas successes. Robin had sung lead on the record, and its success had cemented for him a sense of artistic identity. Yet, as the Bee Gees continued their rise to fame, Barry increasingly took the lead on the recordings. Years on, Barry conceded that following Massachusetts, Robin never really felt that anyone else should sing lead after that. That sense of being pushed aside